the middle of the 3rd century, and to be more precise, 260 years is considered the highest point of the crisis of the Roman Empire. Under the blows of external enemies, political and economic problems, up to that time a united empire actually ceased to exist, having broken up into several quite independent states. Here we can safely say that the bottom is broken finally. But what if the split of the empire was the very impetus that will help Rome to climb out? Let's find out. To begin with, quite briefly outline the situation at the time of the events described. The empire was bursting at the seams. Continuous struggle of soldier emperors for power finally destabilized the state. Friendly neighbors could not help but take advantage of this state of affairs. On Rome, like a wounded beast, fell literally from all sides. Add to this economic collapse, famine, and epidemics, you get a cocktail of problems that had to drink Valerian, who came to power. The Roman commander, a descendant of the Senate nobility, was proclaimed emperor by his own legions, as were all his predecessors in times of imperial crisis. But to carry such a burden alone is very burdensome. For this reason, Valerian made a very good decision, appointing his son Gallienus co-emperor. Thus, the emperor killed 2 birds with 1 stone. He removed from his shoulders part of the hanging problems, and also slightly limited the maneuver for potential usurpation of power. Valerian took under his tutelage the east of the empire, where the situation at that time seemed the most alarming, and Gallienus got the western parts of it. Such separate rule will be one of the key features of the late empire. Nevertheless, while Valerian solved the eastern problems, his son did not have to chill in the capital. The Germanic barbarians were climbing literally from all sides. The first thing, Gallienus went to pacify the borders on the Danube. But even there, August was not long. Franks in alliance with Alemanni broke through the Rhine and went fire and sword on the western provinces of the empire. Gallienus, in fact, turned out to be a good commander, and he managed to take control of the situation, stabilizing the situation on the Germanic border. But, while he held back the barbarian attacks on the Rhine, Alemanni managed to invade the heart of the Roman Empire, Italy. But even here, Gallienus did not give up. Leaving the Rhine border under the control of his second son, Salonen, Gallienus at all speed rushed to intercept Alemanni in northern Italy, and here luck was on the side of August. He managed to defeat the enemy near Mediolanus, taking the threat directly from Italy. Thus, for a long time, Gallienus managed to hold back the onslaught of barbarians on the western borders. Of course, no final reconciliation of the borders was out of the question. But everything could change for the better, especially under such rulers who wanted to bring order to the state with all their might. So perhaps, and happened, if not for one tiny little but. At the same time, Emperor Valerian was defeated by the Persians, captured and humiliatingly killed. The news of the shameful capture of the emperor in 260 as a thunderclap traveled to all corners of the vast empire, bringing the political crisis of the state to its climax. The Persians, building on their success, subjugated Mesopotamia and invaded Syria. Barbarian tribes tightened their raids on Gaul and northern Italy, and the Goths at this time ruthlessly plundered the Balkans and Asia Minor. The situation was catastrophic. Therefore, the Roman commanders were waiting for decisive action from Gallienus, now the only ruler of the Roman Empire. And then Augustus realized that the ground was leaving under his feet. There was nothing he could do about the eastern threat. That huge Roman army, which was commanded by the unfortunate Valerian, was defeated by the Persians, and Gallienus himself was constrained by the invasion of barbarians in the west. The reaction to such inaction of the emperor did not take long to come. A wave of rebellions and usurpations swept across the whole power. One of the first to rebel was the Gaulish commander Postumus, who was in full confidence that he as no one else fits the role of emperor in such a difficult time, and will certainly cope with the upcoming challenges. By getting rid of Gallienus's son, Saturninus, he was able to rally around him almost all the western possessions of the empire, Lower Germany, Gaul, Britain, and part of Spain. However, such a train of thought was not only in Postumus. Meanwhile, in the east, The remnants of the Roman army, with the support of Palmyra King Odonato, an ally of the empire, managed to stop the invasion of the Persians. It turned out that the eastern commanders had dealt with the Persian threat on their own. Then in their heads arose a quite natural question. Why do we even need such a helpless emperor? The result of such reasoning was quite obvious: the rebellion in the east of the commander Marcian, the Persian victor, and the proclamation of his sons as the new Augustans. Something is not enough of a headache for Gallienus. More mutinies are needed. Therefore, to please the emperor even more, the legions on the Danube and in Macedonia revolted, and the prefect of Egypt decided to support Marcian and join the rebellion in the east. Finally, we have the perfect picture of a civil war where most of the empire was not under the control of the incumbent ruler. Now it is now possible to put an end to the power of the Romans, but Gallienus thought otherwise. Despite the untold number of rebellions and the pressure of external enemies on the borders of the empire, Gallienus still had a significant military force and was not a bad commander, which allowed him to somehow maneuver in the situation. The main thing here was to correctly prioritize. The first thing, Gallienus tried to punish the Stropypostum in Gaul, but without achieving any results, decided to leave everything as it is. Under the pressure of the Germans, and the newly emerged ruler of the Gallic Empire did not have the strength to go to Rome. Therefore, this state of affairs quite suited Gallienus. Let Postum consider himself what he wants, as long as he does not have the opportunity to seize power in the whole empire, and also restrains the barbarian attacks from across the Rhine. There are enough problems without him. For example, the rebellion on the Danube, which posed a great threat to Gallienus's power, at least because of its geographical location. For this reason, Gallienus sent one of his best generals, Aureolus, to quell the dangerous rebellion. However, Gallienus's commander managed to stabilize the situation on the Danube easily enough. Nevertheless, it was too early to celebrate. The eastern usurper Marcian, unlike Postum, had the opportunity to lead his legions to Rome, which certainly decided to take advantage. But even here, a talented commander, Gallienus, showed himself at his best. The army of the usurper was defeated in battle in the Balkans, and the power of the emperor directly. Nothing threatened. No less important is the fact that it was at this moment the king of Palmyra, Odonato. He interrupted his successful Persian campaign and finished the minions of Marcian in the east, thereby formally restoring the power of the emperor there. Gallienus had no possibility personally to deal with eastern affairs. Therefore, in gratitude for support, emperor has appointed Odonato co-ruler with a title of August that automatically made the king of Palmyra, in fact, independent ruler of the east. Gallienus, with full confidence, went to such a serious step, because now the whole struggle with the restless Persians was given into the hands of others. Soon Egypt, which was left without the support of the eastern provinces, was also subdued. Thus, Gallienus managed to curb the terrible political crisis that arose after the death of his father. But at what cost? The United Roman Empire no longer existed, but in any case the emperor was able to put his sword in its scabbard for a while and do something other than endless war. This kind of respite allowed Gallienus to focus on state transformations and reforms. Since the army has long been the main pillar of imperial power, and to placate soldiers could only be a ringing coin, Gallienus began to erect mints directly in the areas of deployment of the legions. This greatly simplified the process of placation. In addition, it was obvious to everyone that the traditional military system of the empire is very outdated. The problems on the borders and defeats from the Persians clearly demonstrated it. For this reason, Gallienus reorganized the army, increasing the role of cavalry and border units. In the end, the emperor laid the foundation for a mobile army, which will be further developed in the late empire. But the most important innovation of Gallienus was the prohibition of the Senate estate to perform military service. Of course, the Senate by this time little decided in the political life of the empire. However, it was composed of very rich and powerful people, and their close relationship with the army commanders to some extent facilitated the usurpation of power. Valerian, Gallienus's father, is an example. With this reform, the emperor pursued another goal. Now, at the head of the legions were real military professionals, which was incredibly important in an era of endless wars. Gallienus was able to effectively use the peaceful time given to him to lay the foundations for those changes that were to help the empire to survive. But unfortunately, the lull did not last long. In 267, the Goths invaded the Balkans and Asia Minor once again, plundering and burning everything in their path. The situation was so serious that Gallienus had to take command into his own hands. The plight of the emperor could easily take advantage of Postumus, and in order to secure northern Italy from the invasion of the usurper, Gallienus appointed his favorite Aurelius commander-in-chief of the imperial army in the region. But while the emperor was dealing with the Goths, Aurelius suddenly betrayed Gallienus and went over to the side of Postumus. The rebellious general, who had many glorious victories under his belt, decided to try his luck and moved his army to Rome. Gallienus, slightly surprised and with the words, "You had to fight evil, not join it," abandoned everything and moved into Italy. He managed to defeat Aureolus and lock the warlord in Mediolana. It seemed that the crisis situation is about to be resolved, but during the siege of the city, Gallienus caught up with what has become commonplace for most emperors before him. A talented commander and reformer fell victim to a conspiracy of his own supporters. Before the Roman emperor at that time was simply an impossible task, to pull the empire out of complete anarchy. But still, Gallienus managed to show himself as a man who was able to soberly assess the plight of the situation and find the most effective way to get out of such, to put it mildly, difficult situation. Yes, for many contemporaries may have seemed weakness, inaction, Gallienus, in relation to the usurpation of power Postumus in the west and the war with the Persians in the east. But the dismemberment of the empire into 3 parts had a positive effect. Thanks to the forced division of power, finally managed to cope with external threats and concentrate on internal problems of the state. Gallienus did not have to waste his already small forces to contain the barbarians on the Rhine border. This was Postum, and take some steps on the Persian issue. This was Odenat. Such a circumstance allowed Gallienus to find time for military and political reforms, and it was these reforms gave way to a new and energetic military nobility, which would later complete the initiated reforms, reassemble the empire, and pull it out of the crisis.